Good morning and welcome to the Core Connection. I'm Mira Rubin here with you on Enlightened World Network. And today's topic is judgment of self, judgment of others. That judgment of self translates into judgment of others. And we get to talk about the whole dynamics behind that and the ramifications of it. But before we get started, let's take a couple minutes to get present. Let's take a deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And imagine clean, crisp oxygen flooding your lungs, flowing into your bloodstream, nourishing all your cells, all your organs, bringing vital life energy to your body and being. And as you exhale any tension, negativity, stress, fatigue. And now let's take another deep breath in through your nose and hold it. This time, imagine brilliant, bright light lighting you up from the inside out, illuminating, electrifying, and energizing all your cells, all your molecules, all your electrons, creating a brilliant beam of light and energy from your heart out into the world. And as you exhale any tension, any remaining stress, fatigue, negativity. And now let's press our palms together, rub those palms together really vigorously, feel the friction, the temperature, all those sensations and the tickling and tingling of all that energy when you stop, and allow all those sensations to bring you present right here, right now, into this remarkable physical form that enables you to experience life. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Great to be with you this morning. Good morning, Rosalind. Great to have you here with us this morning. Good morning, Bernadette. Great to have you here with us this morning. And welcome to everybody else who's joining us. So this morning we're talking about judgment and how when we're really critical and judgmental of ourselves, it is a given that we will be really critical and judgmental of others. And that there are lots of ramifications to that kind of behavior and that kind of dynamic that are really toxic, actually. And so I had an experience, a conversation with someone who is deeply, deeply, deeply self-critical. And it turned out that they were also very, very, very critical of their partner because their partner just wasn't measuring up to their expectations, wasn't doing what they wanted their partner to do. And they were pretty vocal about this. So given that they were really vocal about this circumstance and their dissatisfaction with their partner retreated and just did less and less and less and communicated less and less and less. And I wonder if you've seen any kind of dynamic like that in your life. So I remember growing up and even into adulthood. When I was growing up, my mom was a bit of a perfectionist. That's an understatement, by the way. And so everything had to be just so. Bernadette says I tend to retreat. Well, I think that's a normal response. So I'm just going to give this example. So I was charged with vacuuming the living room, and I vacuumed the living room. This is just so vivid in my memory. I vacuumed the living room, and the pattern that was left on the rug from the vacuum cleaner wasn't all aligned, all the back and forth, and the nap of the rug wasn't all regimented and lined up. And I was reprimanded for that, and obviously not for having vacuumed the rug. And So from that point forward, it was like, well, you vacuum the rug then. And I had that experience cooking for someone who complained about the cooking, and it was like, okay, you do it, because I'm done. It's like not only lack of appreciation, but also criticism. So there was my experience of having been on the receiving end of that judgment was, I am completely unenrolled. I have no interest in even trying, because I felt unappreciated and I felt judged. And I think that this is not an uncommon dynamic. That I think we see that with teenagers a lot too, but not just, right? Like in relationships, when we show criticism and lack of appreciation, what we often get is not somebody stepping up to the plate to improve whatever it was we were criticizing, but rather to just retreat, like you said, Bernadette, and say, nope, I'm out of here. And what happens is that person goes into themselves, and disengages more and more and more. And it's a very interesting dynamic that comes out of our own sense that things should be a certain way. We don't measure up, and everybody else should measure up to this standard that we're unable to maintain for ourselves, and then we impose it on others. So, or we impose expectations on others that we do manage to meet, and figure, well, if I can do it, you can do it. Or if I'm taking responsibility for that, you should be taking responsibility for that. And I don't want to bear the whole burden of this. And, whether it's fair or not fair is another conversation. But the judgment and the criticism that is expressed in that frustration of the other person not meeting one's expectations are accomplishing exactly the opposite of what we're trying to accomplish in the context of our communication. So Bernadette says, I had experiences like that and had to do a bathroom, spit shine, military style, and Mom went and did it right after me again. I said, since you're going to do it anyway, you can do it yourself. Many wars over expectations. Exactly. So this is hysterical. I mentioned that my mom was a bit of a perfectionist, and so like I'll go grocery shopping for her and I'll put stuff away for her, and then she'll go back and rearrange it. It's the same thing. So it's I'm less activated by it now. It's just there are certain things I won't do. Like when she and I go grocery shopping, I would pick out fruit and vegetables, and she would go back and pick out different ones. So I won't pick them out anymore, because why? It's a waste of my time and energy to pick them out if she's going to go pick out different ones. So we've managed to figure out ways to apportion our grocery experience, so that I can utilize my time more efficiently, right? But when someone it feels really, on the receiving end, it feels really disrespectful of time and energy, and it feels like a put down. Oftentimes it often is a put down, to be told that the way that you're doing something is inadequate, unacceptable, not up to snuff. So then oftentimes the response, that kind of response or criticism does not encourage one one's wanting to improve. Instead, it's quite disempowering. And so then we deal with the consequences of that kind of behavior, which is oftentimes a degradation of relationship, right? Because that creates a wedge. Now, fortunately, I've gotten to a place, Bernadette says, it stops you from trying, right? It doesn't make you want to perform better. It just makes you say, no, I'm done. I'm not doing it. So fortunately, I've gotten to a place in my life where I can allow my mom to be my mom and not take it personally. It's just how she is. So I don't have to get all upset and try and pick vegetables better. I just let her pick her vegetables, and not get all bent out of shape about it. But that wasn't the case growing up, right? It's like there was nothing. My experience was there was nothing I could do that was good enough. And what does that do in terms of interpersonal dynamics or even personal perception? If someone is constantly giving you that message that whatever you do isn't going to be good enough, then what does that say about you if you internalize that messaging, and which we often do as children, right? We internalize the messaging, not that this person has their issues with perfectionism and judgment, but that I'm not good enough, which is a pretty hefty thing to be on the receiving end of, or the pretty hefty indoctrination for a child or for a partner, right? So Rosalind says the person receiving the judgment, withdrawing as a protection mechanism. Absolutely. Absolutely. Because I'm just not going to engage in that way. I don't get your criticism. So Rosalind says, if I'm already approving of myself, what would be doing different? Well, what we might be doing different is being able to put boundaries around what we do, which is kind of what I've done with my mom, not begrudgingly anymore, which is a wonderful thing to be able to be at a point where I can say, you know what, you like things the way that you like things, that's fine. I'll do the things that I can do that are not, on this subjective spectrum. So like I can buy the laundry detergent that you want. You specify it, I can go get it. I can support you in that way. I know what size the package needs to be. I know what brand you want, and I can go and do that. And rather than setting myself up by picking stuff out and then you going back and redoing my efforts, why? Let's capitalize on our mutual effort. And when we're to your suggestion, Rosalind, when we are approving of ourselves and secure enough in ourselves, then we can allow for other people's idiosyncrasies without taking it personally, because that's how she is. It's not about me. It really isn't about me. Growing up, I didn't know that. Growing up, it was about me because that was the messaging that I was getting. Now it's just her thing, and I don't have to take it personally. So Bernadette says, I tend to now ask, what exactly do you expect? I'll then decide if it's doable without criticism. Yeah, and sometimes there's an opening for a conversation around that criticism. It's just that, like, what I know about my mom, who's now 92, is she likes things the way she likes them, and that's just her. And she wants things organized the way she wants them. It's not about me. It's not about me. So I have more latitude to be able to give her what she wants, to know where I can give her what she wants and where I can't. And when it's a no-sum game or it's a lose situation for me, then I don't do it. So like I don't pick the vegetables. That's all. When we go together, to the grocery store, I don't pick the vegetables because she's got her way of doing it. And so it's interesting to see how, now that I am, to your point, Rosalind, more accepting of myself, I am able to be more accepting. This is the same judgment thing, right? As I'm more accepting of myself, I can be more accepting of her and her foibles, right? Because I know it's not my problem. It's not my issue. It's hers. So I can show her the respect for her that I would like to be shown, even if she doesn't get it, like even if she doesn't know how to show that respect. It's not because she is deliberately being disrespectful. It's because she's stuck in her own judgments. Bernadette says, I have to admit I'm judgmental when others load the dishwasher, LOL. So I do the dishes myself. And, so we all have our things, right? We have the things that we want done the way that we want them done, right? And so good for you to do the dishes yourself, Bernadette, because it's not, other people are going to load the dishwasher the way they load it. And then if you go reload it, it's a waste of effort, right? So good for you to just know to do it yourself. It's like, I have certain ways I like things done. You know what? Let me do that. I don't want to waste your time and effort. I'll do it so that it's done the way I like it done. We all have our things, right? It might be the way you fold laundry. It's so funny, the stuff we get all bent out of shape around, right? How the dishwasher's loaded, how the dishes are washed, how they're stacked on the counter, how they're put away. We all have our things, how the bed is made. We have all these judgments. And we personalize the judgments to say, well, if they really cared about me, they'd load the dishwasher right. Like how crazy is that? We can get so nutty the way that we personalize all these things. And then that judgment ends up bubbling over into relationship, because who wants to feel judged? Who wants to feel like somebody is telling them they don't measure up? I don't need that. Do you need that? Who wants to be in a relationship when you're judged all the time? I mean, really, why? I know that, the self-hatred that I grew up with, the sense of deep inadequacy, it came from me as I've got hiccups now, me as a child, not being able to discern that all these judgments, that wasn't my issue. And as a child, actually, it was my issue, because I was in a position where I had to please, right? I had to perform in certain ways. So, but the internalization of that kind of messaging, that's pretty deep. It goes pretty deep. So Rosalind says, judging, a disempowered sense of being. If people around me are reflections, somehow we're seeing ourselves indirectly. Exactly, Rosalind. So the judgments that we have of others are projections of our self-judgments. And it's either that we have overcome whatever it is we're judging somebody else against. Like my mom was a super perfectionist, and I had to overcome being that way with others, and I brutalized other people too, around them not meeting my expectations of how things should be. Rather than being able to be connected to that person, or to realize that, oh, you know what, it's not that important. What happens with perfectionism, part of it is that it's a deep need to control, right? To try to keep everything under control. And the fact is that life never measures up, and we can't really control things. And we certainly can't control other people past a certain point, right? And when we relieve ourselves of the fear that is motivating that need to control, then life can be a lot happier for ourselves and everybody around us, right? So Rosalind says, if I'm criticized by family, I just have to expect it's coming and not let it stick. Well, that's the thing, is about not letting it stick. As children, we don't have the discernment to move through that messaging, right? We don't have the capacity to know. We don't, that this isn't about us, especially when we are spoken down to, when we are told that we did a bad job, or we didn't do something well enough. It is personal, right? As a child. And as an adult, we might be able to say, well, maybe I didn't do that according to your expectations. Had you made your expectations clearer, perhaps I could have. Or, that's an unreasonable expectation, or whatever else, that we can interact, and we could say, okay, that's their expectation. I can adjust to that. It's not no skin off my teeth. And where's that expression from? No skin off my teeth. It's the weirdest expression. Anyway, so criticism, the criticism that we receive, like, some people make a joke out of putting other people down. Unacceptable. To make fun of other people for a misstep, or a mistake, to make fun of other people. That's a domination and control kind of behavior. And it's not it's subversive, right? It's subversive to put somebody down jokingly, to joke about, oh, somebody forgot something, and then to joke about it. And it's the joking is often a way to be lodging a criticism, like a sarcastic criticism. And sarcasm is very cutting and undermining, right? It's not cool. It's belittling. So Bernadette says, I've heard no skin off my nose, but teeth, that's a new one for me. I wonder if I just made it up, no skin off my teeth. I don't know. I think it's a real expression. I should look it up. Anyway, Rosalind says, become present to make the choice in the moment is more freeing than creating a boundary or rule book. Exactly. Like, what are all this judgment stuff comes from expectations, right? Expectations that things should be different from the way they are. That your behavior is a show of disrespect to me, for instance. You know, if your behavior is reflects on me, like parents thinking that their children are a reflection of themselves, and therefore they can't allow their children to be expressive of who they are because the parent has a judgment about that, for instance. Bernadette says, I may have heard it before, so you're right. Well, I don't know. It's still a weird expression. If somebody has a chance to look it up and see where that came from, I'm really curious. Anyway, this judgment thing is pernicious. It is a darkness that spreads and continues to spread in subtle and often not so subtle ways. And I think that when we recognize, that's the key actually, is to recognize that we're in a space of judgment of self, of others. When we recognize that, we're often, it's like beating somebody constantly with a cudgel, or on a more subtle sense, it's like the water torture treatment, where it's just drip, 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 until it just can make you mad. And I mean crazy by mad. So be aware of the cost of your judgment, your self-judgment, and then how you project that judgment outward. Because some of us believe that if we're judgmental of ourselves, that'll keep us in line. But then we project all those kinds of judgments and expectations on others. So it's really important to be recognizing what goes on around that judgment. Bernadette says, when does judgment become not judgment, but a teaching tool of doing something better, or is it always judgment? That's a really good question. Well, there are standards, and it's a juggling act, right? There are standards for how something can be done and how to do it correctly, and maybe then I think it's the way that we bring ourselves to that teaching moment to say, hey, you know, you did an awesome job. Check this out. And look at what if you did it this way, it might be even better. That's a whole different thing than, you know what, you did that in a way that just sucks and it's unacceptable. It's a whole different thing, right? Like how we bring ourselves to that conversation. So anyway, that's it for this morning. I am so glad to have these conversations with you, and I'm grateful to you for your participation. And I love that you keep showing up and being part of these conversations that can often be kind of tough sometimes. So anyway, lots and lots of love to you. I'm Mira Rubin. This is the Core Connection. And I go live here each weekday morning on the Enlightened World Network Facebook page and YouTube channel at 9 a.m. Eastern. And it is, as I said, my pleasure and privilege to be with you. And until next time, I hope I see you here really, really soon. Until then, lots and lots of love.